10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff and the clock is starting. Liftoff.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And get ready to sync your watches. It's time now for Kerbal Cast, episode 26, Rockets and Other Useless Machines.
The Apollo missions were fake to bankrupt the Soviet Union.
I'm your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin. And with us, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program, we'll talk about our progress in the game, Moho, Gilly, and Eeloo.
And a hole in the ground.
Dark
Mushroom blows our minds with Patched Conics in the latest Dark Matters. Your letters and the latest Kerbal news in the mission briefing.
And this week, a special guest, Wanderfound, with Spaceplanes.
This week's Shea Challenge has you building and destroying.
And we'll wrap things up with After the Credits. It's going to be a spoilerific conversation about Interstellar. And this is going to be absolutely fresh because we've both seen the movie and neither one of us have said a word to the other about what we thought. So you're going to be learning it at the same time I am.
Yeah, I watched it right before I got here.
Yeah, you saw it just, a couple hours ago?
An hour or two ago.
I saw it first thing Saturday morning.
I walked down to the theater about 3.5 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
And I probably spent that entire time peeing because I didn't want to leave the theater, and I drank too much before I walked in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is not a spoiler. It is a bladder buster of a movie. 'Cause it's 2 hours and 40 minutes?
Yeah, 2 hours, 40 minutes.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I made a point of I didn't have any coffee. I had very little to drink. It's like, I had just a tiny bit of breakfast.
See, I dressed up and I wore an astronaut uniform, costume that I could go to the bathroom in.
It's weird.
It didn't say it that I could on the package, but I was like, it's got to be real, so I did.
I should have done that because I dressed up like Anne Hathaway and I got some really weird looks.
Oh, yeah.
So I should have gone into that.
Should have left the cat suit at home.
Well, you want to get into oh, stop.
It's like the radio shows that have the keyboards with the sound effects.
Oh, yeah, we should have that. It's like push a button and go, Well, do you want to talk progress?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, I have had a very productive week.
Yeah, well, forget your week.
Yeah, forget my week.
Might have sucked.
Well, do you remember I told you I was not 100% sure that I had been to Moho? I was pretty sure that I'd been around it, that I'd gone around it.
But you hadn't been on it.
Well, I was not 100% positive that I'd even orbited it. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to make absolutely sure that I had that crossed off, I sent an unmanned probe to Moho. And anyone who's been following the Twitter feed knows that because I tweeted out pictures. And I actually got some funny tweets back because you know how we've always joked that Moho sounds like a chocolatey drink?
Yeah.
Like Yahoo.
Yoo-hoo.
Yoo-hoo. I'm thinking of the website now, aren't I?
Yeah.
I've always joked that Moho sounds like a chocolate drink. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I landed my unmanned probe, took a picture, and then tweeted that out, and I said, probe confirms Moho is not a frothy, chocolatey drink. And a lot of people responded by saying, oh no, another lie that we've been told, another myth that's been destroyed.
And we never returned.
Found
out the moon wasn't made of cheese. Never went back.
First, the moon wasn't made out of cheese. Now Moho isn't a frothy, chocolatey
what
drink.
What is left?
What is left?
Are you going to tell me Minmus isn't made out of sherbet?
How did you know? Who told you?
What? I didn't believe the lies.
And Kerbal Claus isn't real.
Okay, now you're just making stuff up.
He doesn't come down the VAB and bring you presents. But anyway, okay, so I went to Moho because I wanted to make sure I had that crossed off.
Yeah.
And so there's only one planet left, Eeloo. Which that's something I'm going to talk about because I have a question for the listeners.
Okay, so since we started...
Hang on. I got one more thing, okay? I've been to Moho. I am currently approaching Eeloo, okay? And I did a manned mission, and I landed on a planet. And you know what planet it was?
Oh, man. You've landed on this thing. Just stop it.
She's always bringing trouble. Her hair is like a bubble. Knock, knock. Who's there is Gilly.
Gilly. You know, whenever I saw you reach for that space bar,
You knew that's what I was going to do?
I just had a feeling I wasn't going to enjoy anything that was on it. No.
Yeah, what I wanted to do, instead of going straight for Eeloo, what I wanted to do was I wanted to unlock the nuclear engines, the rocket motors.
Oh, you didn't have those?
Had not unlocked them. Remember, I have restarted.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm playing through science again.
Yeah.
So, in order to get enough science, I sent a manned mission to Gilly.
No, stop it.
Okay, I sent a manned mission to Gilly. Landed. Gilly has it has no atmosphere and extremely low gravity.
That's the one where you had to RCS down just to stay parked.
Yeah. I was actually, and that's what I did was I came to a complete stop, and I don't remember how high off the surface I was, but I came to a complete stop, and I was just kind of hanging there. And so I had to RCS down to get enough speed to actually land. And so I finally touched down, and you know how I've always said that about 5 meters a second is what I always shoot for?
Huh?
I would have to speed up to get to 5 meters a second. Left on its own, it was going down at like 1 meter per second.
Just gotta be patient.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I really, truly could have done sandwich time. I could have gone like in the other room and had a sandwich and watched a show and come back and go, well, I haven't landed yet.
We're getting there.
But I did touch down. I ran all my science experiments, and then I wanted to EVA. So I clicked the EVA button. Jeb steps out of the capsule and immediately floats away. That's how low the gravity. And what he does is he floats off, and he does this very, very slow little arc, and he hits the ground and then just starts sliding. Okay? And he's like laying on his side, and he's just sliding and sliding. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching the lander just get smaller and smaller in the distance. And I'm, and the whole time I'm hitting the space bar trying to get him to jump. I'm hitting the WASD keys trying to get him to stand up. Nope, he just keeps sliding. And he slides and he slides. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to go like right off the side of this thing. He finally slowed down enough to where I was able to stand him up.
Yeah.
And I took a step, and it's like he floats up in the air. So I had to engage the jetpack and fly back to the lander. And when I got to the lander, same thing. I had to RCS down just to get to it.
Man.
But anyway, it was interesting to watch him because, I kept thinking, is he ever going to stop sliding?
Yeah.
I thought, surely there's got to be some ground friction or something that's going to slow him down. But no, I honestly kept looking behind him because I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to hit some little bump and it's going to knock me up and out, and I'm going to be like up in orbit, with an RCS pack trying to get back down. But anyway, so that was my experience on Gilly. Last thing, I told you I've never been to Eeloo. I created a maneuver node, went to Eeloo. I am in the process now of approaching Eeloo. And this is the question I have for the listenership. I have reloaded this several times. Stop. You're laughing.
I just thought your question was going to be, who's the best?
Who's the best?
Biff's the best. Answer done.
No, you're the best.
Oh,
They like you better than me. You're like their little brother.
I'm just hard to get.
Yeah.
Inaccessible.
Yeah, right. No, you're warm and fuzzy.
Oh, am I?
You're huggable.
Those are words.
Those are words. Yes, those are actual words.
Those are words.
But I have reloaded several times, and the reason is I am approaching Eeloo. When I come out of my solar orbit and I first enter my Eeloo encounter, my speed, and I wrote this down, is 3,343.2 meters per second. I have tried burning right when I'm at the periapsis. I have tried burning the minute I hit the encounter. I've tried burning halfway through it. I've tried burning from every angle, and I've tried basically everything I can, and I have managed to slow down and get into orbit once. And I did it with almost no fuel left. My question to the listenership: do you have any tips on slowing down with these planets that, for some reason, seem to be very difficult?
Yeah, they're just zipping by.
Yeah, because otherwise, it's like I go shooting right past Eeloo and right back into solar orbit. I'm wondering, is it better to go to Jewel first and then try to get from Jewel to Eeloo?
Yeah, because you're like coming in a different approach, or
I don't know. Because ordinarily, what I would do, like when I do, like for example, if I want to go to Lathe, if I can't hit Lathe coming in, I can hit Jewel and use it to slow down, and I can even aero brake over it. And I tried to aero brake over Eeloo. And that ended with me slamming into the side of a mountain. Which, again, I want to compliment Squad on their new explosion effects. I get to see those quite a bit. But any tips you have on slowing down and getting into orbit around these planets that don't have a lot of gravity and they don't have an atmosphere? Tips to do this where you still have enough fuel to get home. Anyway. That's my question. Did you get the email I sent you this week with the sound effects?
Yeah. Dreams do come true, people.
Yeah.
You just have to make a podcast and continually ask people to do it for you, but dreams do come true.
Nas had asked, he was always talking about how he would love to have fart sounds.
Because I seriously think monopropellant is methane, straight methane. Because I want to sincerely believe that any course corrections are powered by farts.
Yeah. Well, somebody did a YouTube video where they replaced all the RCS sounds with farts.
It was good.
I saw that and I thought, Nos just went to heaven. He is a happy man.
You know, I want to see like the maturity level of this game before and after my inception into the community, because now we have people building things that just roll around, and now things are powered by farts. I'm doing my best to
dumb the game down,
to bring it down to my level.
Well, it's a noble cause, and somebody has to do it.
Yeah. Hey, that video was awesome.
Oh, I know. I honestly, I was howling.
Yeah.
Because somebody sent us the link.
Yeah.
And, they said, Nos will enjoy this, or you guys should check this out, or something. And so I clicked on the link, having no idea what I was clicking on.
Yeah, you just see this capsule, and you see like a ship, you know, and then just...
Well, and honestly, I was a little hesitant to click on it because somebody else actually had sent me another link, and it was like, "Hey, Biff, you should check this out." And I click, and it's a news anchor dancing to "She Who Must Not Be Named."
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh, you snuck that in."
You have your own personal Rickroll, is what you have.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like that's just for you.
What does that mean?
Rickroll?
Rickroll.
Oh, well, here.
I have no concept.
Let me show you.
Oh, no.
It's something like that where you get somebody to believe they're clicking on something.
Oh, okay.
And they click, and they would get a video of Rick Astley, the video for Never Gonna Give You Up.
Never Gonna Give You Up.
Yeah, you Rickroll somebody when you...
Okay, well somebody Rickrolled me.
Yeah. And now that's probably going to happen to you constantly.
Yeah.
So...
you said that your week has sucked as far as playing the game.
I played the game. It just... Okay, everyone.
You must define.
I would like to take this moment to do a public service announcement for Kerbal Space Program.
Do you want soft music?
Yeah. Yeah, you can give me some soft music. No, not that soft music. So, whenever you're playing, you may think that you have a very good handle of things. You've been playing for a while. But I just want to tell you that no matter what level you get at, no one should build a rocket ship while drunk. You may think this is a good idea, but I will tell you, you'll forget important parts. And some things may just not make it past the first, couple hundred meters of the atmosphere.
I will say that's one thing that this game has done. This is not something that is easy to play when you've had a few.
So I just want to say,
this game has actually encouraged me not.
Don't drink in VAB.
Don't drink in Kerbal. Friends don't let
friends don't let friends.
Kerbal drunk.
Kerbal drunk. Maybe Kerbal period, but especially Kerbal.
Well,
so
if you drink enough, you'll be just as green as a Kerbal.
30 minutes of my game time was, I'm going to build a ship and put it into space because I've had one too many. I had a long day at work.
And you took it out on the game.
And I took it out of the game. So that's 30. I think that takes away 30 minutes of my time. I had to revert the whole thing. It was awful.
What did you forget?
Everything. The thing was just built awful. So you can't put your probe core on the side of the ship because that really messes with your steering.
Oh,
I thought it was gonna build I was like, I'm gonna make like a Star Destroyer.
Have you put one on there upside down yet?
No. I did do sideways though.
I tried to build one where I put the lander. I literally put it upside down, facing the ground.
Yeah.
And the idea was that there was like a big rocket built kind of around it that would take it up into orbit, and then I could like detach and go around and hook onto the typical Rube Goldberg Biff kind of stuff.
There was
right?
probably an easy way to do that, and you said no.
Yeah. And so I get to the launch pad, and clue number one that things weren't going well was that my nav ball
was upside down.
Yeah, it was upside down.
Yeah, when it's orange, when it's orange up, you're like, oh, well.
Yeah. And I launched, and of course, the SAS immediately went, "Whoa, we're upside down."
Yeah. See, mine was sideways. It was like half orange, half blue at launch. I was stationary, and I was like, and I was sitting there, and I was like, well, that's probably not going to be good because I built a spaceship and then just put a girder.
This is a public service announcement.
It is.
You're encouraging people not to drink.
I built a spaceship, put a girder on the side of it, and then put the probe core on sideways on that.
Oh, another thing that will cause you all kinds of grief: don't rotate. Like if your first part is the capsule, don't rotate it.
No.
Because if you do that, then
everything's just done.
Yeah.
It is done.
Well, because everything, if you rotate it, then everything is off, 45 or 90 degrees?
Yeah, because I started with that little octagonal probe core, or maybe it was hexagonal, I don't remember.
See, now you're having blackouts.
Yeah, I know. And
another reason not to drink.
That thing's tiny. It's not the size of other things. It's just small. And so I tried to put it on the top and was like, you know what? I don't need this thing except to steer. So I'm gonna.
I can't wait to use that soundbite in a completely different context.
Yeah. That thing's tiny. It's not the size of other things. It's just small. So I'm going to put a girder on the side and slap that thing on the girder. And so basically there's a rocket with a command thing on a stick. And I just launched that thing. And it did not go well. It was funny. It was sad afterward, but it was funny during. And so I dropped all that.
Things are always better on a stick.
So I played sober, and it didn't go much better. So I was trying to work on Rendezvous, and it was going whatever. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to working on this rescue thing. And I couldn't switch over to control the little dude to try to get him closer to the ship. And then I found out you need to be within 2.3 kilometers to switch to another craft.
You know what would really help you?
What?
If you listen to this podcast.
I quit? Yeah.
Because remember, we talked about
We talked about Rendezvous so many times. I don't remember what episode it is, and I don't want to go look it up because I'm going to read all the descriptions for all the things. And I'm going to listen to it and find the part that I need, and I don't remember.
Breathe. We talked about taking control of the guy several episodes.
Yeah.
I don't remember which episode it was, but I remember we talked about that.
Yeah, I remember it now. I just looked it up, and you got to be within 2.3K.
Yeah.
To can take control of him, and I did, and I did my first ever spacewalk because I had to change seats. I had to change seats in the thing because I wanted to get him in the command pod just because it's easier. But I got to where I was close enough to control the other guy, but they just zoomed right past each other.
Wait a minute. Were you trying to change seats in the same...
Yeah, that sounded confusing. So I had my ship.
Because they've implemented the new transfer system.
I didn't know how to get that going.
Click on the hatch. Just left click on the hatch. It brings up the crew menu. And
like crew report and all that stuff?
No, just left click on the hatch. Like if you've got the capsule, okay?
Yeah.
Left click on the hatch, a little menu will come up. It'll say like Jeb, and then next to it will be a button that says transfer. Click transfer, and then click on what you want him to transfer to.
I didn't click the hatch. This game. Yeah. You just click everything. It's like whenever you got stuck in a point and click adventure, like Full Throttle or I don't know, Mist or Night of the Tentacle or whatever, and you just like go and you just keep clicking everything until something happens.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's just So I didn't do that. I did it the old way, which it wasn't hard, and I got to jetpack for a little while. That was fun. And this is like zipping around in space. And so then...
Were you sober at this point?
Yeah, I was sober.
Okay.
I can't speak for now, but I was sober then. So I get the thing, and...
You're such a bad example.
They get close. They get close enough where I can take control of them.
Right.
But I mean, it's still not close enough to where they can see each other whenever I'm in either one of their shoes. Okay. Because 2.3K is still kind of far.
Right.
You know, especially when you're looking at the blanket of space. You know, it's like hard to find it. So the lint-covered black blanket that is space, and so I'm looking around and I'm trying to get him jetpack over to it, right, and bring the ship closer, and they zoom right past each other because my orbits went to intersecting. Okay. So that didn't work out. So I tried it again a couple more times, trying different stuff and like looking up things, and I watched a couple videos and stuff, and I'm close. I'm on the cusp of rescuing that Kerbal. I'm just like, I can see him, and I will bring his corpse back because he does not. It's taken so long. He's no longer living. Okay, I just had $1 million idea. Yeah, and but it's you that owes me the $1 million. Oh, okay. What? You need to create your own YouTube channel and upload video of this. Yeah. And you need to put yakety sax under it. Okay, and just like speed it up. After all the money it makes me, you could have $1 million. Okay. That's at least a $3 million YouTube channel right there. I would think so. The yakety sax nos mess up hour. I've got that semi stuck in my head because November 5th was last week, and every November 5th I have to watch V for Vendetta. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like, what does that have to do with anything? Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I remember that now. I love that movie. Such a, even if that song had never been around Benny Hill, just that song sounds like something where people would run around and do stupid things. Like, kudos to the guy who wrote Yakety Sax. Yeah. You made the epitome of the song to do dumb things too. I'm telling you, man, $1 million. Yeah. I want to think that the guy that made it was like thinking he was writing this big moving piece or something. Right. He's like, no, it's Yakety Sax. This is it, hon. This is the one I'll be remembered for. My opus. Yeah. Yakety Sax. This is my Plan 9 from outer space. Yeah. Oh. So, those are my main things. So did you ever rescue the guy? No. Oh, okay. I keep passing him. I keep the orbit. I'm so close, and the most minor adjustment does not take me very much closer to him, and so it's on this hair. Yeah. Hair. Oh God, it's hairy. Isn't it? You and I. This is rare. You and I are both at a midpoint right now. I am trying to slow down enough to get into orbit around Eeloo. You're trying to rescue a guy in orbit. I mean, and you and I have both stopped at a point where we haven't finished what we're trying to do. That's like every progress. Because remember, okay, so when we last left my progress, I have some guy about to crash into the moon, but we'll get to that next week. Hey, what's your progress this week? Oh, he crashed. We got a new guy crashing into the moon. Yeah. We'll find out about next week. Right. It's seriously I don't know, a constant to be continued with me of what's going to crash into what next. One thing that I thought was real funny was when I was creating the maneuver node to get from Kerbin to Eeloo. Yeah. You remember I told you that Eeloo has the weirdest orbit. It's a very elongated oval. And at one point it actually crosses Jewel, and Jewel becomes for a short time the outermost planet. And then they cross orbits again, and Eeloo goes back to being the outermost planet. Well, my intersection was at that point right when Eeloo was crossing back over Jewel's orbit. Okay. Yeah. For some, and I know that the next time I try to go to Jewel, this will not happen. But every time I was trying to create a maneuver node, I mean, I would barely tap one of the tabs, and boom, I'd have a Jewel encounter. Yeah. And it was like, no, I'm not trying to go. I'm trying to go to Eeloo. And so, I'd tweak this, and boom, another Jewel encounter. It's like the Microsoft paperclip. It's like, hey, I see you're making an orbit. You want to go to Jewel? No. Go away. Yeah. Oh, well, and you've gotten into fights with Microsoft Word where you... Yeah, the autocorrect fights. Yeah, it keeps changing a word, and you keep going, no, that's not how that's not what I'm trying to say. And then you change it, and it changes it back. Yeah, it's like I'm trying to make stupid cat memes. I need them to be spelled wrong.
I guarantee you, the next time I try to go to Jewel, I will not create Jewel encounters that easily. The fact that I wasn't trying to go to Jewel.
Okay. Lift up your hand.
What?
And now put your other hand on top of that stack of letters you have from our listeners and swear it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Swear upon these letters.
What? I swear that I am incompetent?
Yes.
I swear to my incompetency.
I swear I won't make one go into Jewel.
Yeah. No, I know what I'm saying is that I guarantee you it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah.
When I'm actually trying to do a Jewel encounter, I will not have that kind of luck.
You need to act like you're going for an Eeloo encounter.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
just
true.
act like you're going for Eeloo. And
now, why didn't I think
and trick
of
the
that?
game and then actually go to Jewel?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like how I trick the game into thinking that I don't want to crash. I do. That's all I want, and it gives it to me every time.
I will. I do want to say at this point, I have to really thank our listeners. You're looking at me funny. Don't look at me funny.
I looked at the clock.
You just went, wrong, like ruh-roh. No, I want to thank our listeners. When I started this, when we started this podcast, I think at that time I had been to Eve and to Duna, and I think that was it.
Yeah, I was actually going to make a comment on that earlier. That like whenever we first started, you'd only been to like 2 places.
Yeah,
it's like you'd been to. Like, you were really telling me about how to get to the Mun and stuff.
Right.
And I was like,
right.
That's what I'm trying. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
I know I can. I know
yeah,
I can.
And you're like, yeah, I've been there a lot. But I'm on Duna and stuff. And like since then
I've been to every. I have to be careful and not say planet. I've been to every planetary system. I have not landed on anything in the Jool system.
Yeah.
And right now, I haven't landed on anything at Eeloo.
Yeah.
Although I'm trying.
But yeah, you've ventured out. You've seen them all.
Yeah, I've now been to every one.
You have not, put feet.
I haven't put boots on the ground yet.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I want to thank our listenership for. I am a much better player now than I was when we started, because we have had so many occasions where you and I have talked about things and people have written in and said, here's a better way to get into orbit. Here's a better way to get off the ground. Here's a tweak that you didn't know about. Here's a better way to go from one planet to the next. I mean, we have gotten so much feedback from the listenership since we started.
Yeah.
And, I said on day one, I'm a mid-level player. I'm going to admit my mistakes when I make them. What I'm saying right now is to the best of my knowledge. It may be something that 10 episodes from now, you'll
see the error of your ways.
I'll see the error of my ways. And the listeners have really helped me grow as a player, because honestly, when I first started this game, when I first started the podcast with you, to get from Kerbin to Duna was an effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To get from Kerbin to Eve was an effort. Now it's like, thanks to the listenership, I've learned how to get into orbit with fuel, the most fuel efficient way. Thanks to the listenership, I know how to go from one planet to another efficiently. They have taught me so much. Yeah. And when I encountered Eeloo, my thought was, I am amazed at the fact that I've reached a point where I'm actually able to do these things. Because before, I would be so out of fuel before I even tried to get to Eeloo.
They thank us all the time for doing the podcast. Really, we sort of just made a hub for them to for them to help each other and help us, because we're really not that helpful. Like you go back and listen, like, these guys don't know what they're doing.
And you know what? We honestly admit that. I think one of the funniest things when we did the interview with Max Maps way back, one of the funniest things that he said to me was, the guys at Squad, they listen to us because they like to listen to 2 average players talk about their experience, and they learn a lot. But he made that comment. He said that there are times listening to us where they, quote, face palm. Because we say things and they just go, no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
Stop playing drunk.
But, I'm sure if I went back and listened to some of the earlier episodes, I'd probably be face palming. because I know so much more now than I did then. But anyway, just wrap it up. I just, thank you to the listenership. You guys have really helped me a lot. And I never thought that the way to get good at a game was to do a podcast. But apparently it is, so.
Oh, man, I need to do a Battletoads one next. I'm stuck on that game. I can't get past the bike level. I'm going to start a podcast about that level until I pass it.
I give you credit. You worked a Battletoads reference.
I actually play that. I like that game.
It's okay. I have no comment.
just find your local GameStop and ask them about it.
Yeah.
So
if you really want to freak them out, call them with the skew.
Yeah. So I knew someone who knew the skew.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. So
you want to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Well, it's time now for this week's Dark Matters. And Dark Mushroom has promised that this will blow our minds. So prepare to have your minds blown.
After switching jobs, switching shifts, switching platforms, and switching pans comes a monumental episode 10 of Dark Mushroom's Dark Matters. Last episode, we discussed the key concepts behind what makes gravity assist work. Now let's talk about how to get gravity assist to work for us. There's a couple of mods that I briefly want to mention that will help you immensely with getting the very most out of your time in propellant. I know, some Kerbalers swear by the unmodded experience, and I promise all maneuvers here are possible, if difficult, in the stock game. Try to remember back to DK's Precise Node and Kerbal Alarm Clock Modders Minute. Precise Node will allow you to easily make fractional maneuver node adjustments to get you tucked in right next to a planet without making too many adjustment burns along the way, and Kerbal Alarm Clock helps ensure that you don't miss any nodes, encounters, SOI changes, or planetary alignments you need to make your mission a success. Now let's talk about optimal gravity assist parameters. First, to dispel a common Kerbal myth, moons of any kind make poor assist candidates. Specifically, hinging all of your maneuver hopes and dreams on a mooner assist is unwise, as your orbital speed and period around Kerbin allow you to take much greater advantage of the Oberth effect. Instead, the best gravity assists occur close to your periapsis, your fastest moving point in orbit, require little adjustment to reach, occur for the longest period of time along planets with large gravitational footprints, and are roughly on the same orbital plane. Here's the hard part. One of the main disadvantages to performing a gravity assist to both Kerbals and real-life space programs is getting your assist planets in a helpful position. This is one of those cases where you can easily spend more time planning and adjusting your maneuver nodes than actually performing them. It helps to increase the level of conics the game calculates. You can do this directly from Precise Node or from the KSP config in the stock game, so that KSP will reveal more information on your orbit post-assist. Finally, let's talk about Eve. Eve plays a dual role in interplanetary transfers. You can perform significant aerobrake maneuvers in its thick atmosphere to slow your orbital speed if you are trying to move to the inner bodies of the Kerbal system, and Eve also makes for an excellent assist candidate if you are heading to planets in higher orbits. Your exact maneuvers will depend on the position of the planets in your save, but using this knowledge, consider the following scenario. You burn prograde against Kerbin's orbit to get an encounter with Eve. You can often then use that encounter to get another encounter with Kerbin, increasing your orbital speed. You may then get an encounter with Duna to further increase your orbital speed, and so on and so forth, as your patience dictates. If you are dedicated to burning as little fuel as possible but can't seem to scratch up a good encounter from your periapsis, it is often advantageous to wait an orbit or two to see if any opportunities present themselves. Be careful as you plan these encounters, especially with those planets not perfectly in your orbital plane, to conservatively correct any inclination changes the assist may incur. Now that you are forcing your Kerbals to spend years in orbit to save a few units of fuel, go ahead and upload screenshots of your most daring assists to @KerbalCast and @DarkMushroom87 on Twitter. Or send stories of aging Kerbals hopelessly locked in confinement with nothing but their own thoughts to KerbalPodcast@gmail.com with the subject line Cabin Fever. And remember, in the words of Sophocles, astronomy, impossible to understand and madness to investigate.
And that was Dark Mushroom with this week's Dark Matters.
Let's do mission briefing.
All right.
This is where we read your letters and Kerbal news when we have it.
And I have it.
And you have it.
This one comes from Jim B.
Jim Beam?
No, Jim B.
Okay.
I'm sober for this podcast, I swear. I have been an avid podcast listener for a few years, and when a friend of mine turned me on to Kerbal Space Program, I naturally went looking for a podcast to go with it. Good luck. As I've been learning the game, I've been plowing through your backlog of episodes until I've at last caught up. I think the two of you are a great mix. As someone new to the game, all the tips, trials, and tribulations have been very relevant to me. I hope you learned from at least one of us, but most likely from our listeners. Here's something
learning from our mistakes.
Yeah. Here's something I haven't heard anyone comment on yet. Your audio quality is very good. Thank you very much. I think your audio quality is just great. The pacing of the show is very comfortable, and all of your edits are very clean. I pay attention to such things as my day job as a musician, and my hobbies have been filmmaking and podcasting. I did a short fiction audio drama podcast called Red Line Theater. It's available on iTunes.
Oh, I'm going to have to look for that.
So
what's it called?
Red Line Theater.
Red Line Theater.
Yeah. So I know how much...
Hey, there we go. Shameless plug.
So I know how much work can go into putting out an episode, so thank you for your hard work. Well, no problem.
Well, thank you
Mainly
very
because I
much.
don't do the editing. He does. So no problem on my part. I vote for bringing back As the Kerbal Turns.
As the Kerbal Turns.
At least every once in a while. I've always looked forward to them, and I've liked how different they are from the rest of the show. They're good, and the rest of the show isn't.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention a couple of tips that I found to be immensely helpful to me. Rather than F5 and F9, I always use Alt F5 and Alt F9 so I can create multiple saves during a mission. I didn't know it did that.
I when I read that letter when it came in, and it came in a couple of days ago, and I read it. I've already used that several times. It brings up, the save window when you exit out of the game.
Oh, and it says like how many quick saves you have?
It says quick save number whatever.
Yeah.
It brings up that menu in the game.
Oh.
And then if you need to, you can Alt F9 and it brings up an entire list of all your saves. And you can select the one you want.
Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a very helpful tip.
Yeah. That way, if I ended up making a miscalculation on my way to Minmus and find out once I've run out of fuel on my way back, I can go back and fix the error. It took me a while to figure out that placing and holding my cursor over different parts of a maneuver node allowed me to use my scroll wheel to make minute adjustments. Yeah, I found that out one day by accident.
Yeah. Actually, and that was another helpful hint.
Yeah.
Although I did the same thing. I didn't realize my cursor was over one of the tabs.
Yeah, whenever it happened.
And I was trying to scroll out my view.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my encounter was
like
gone. What happened?
It's still a little clunky to do it that way, and I wish I could just hold the key and use my arrow keys for those slight adjustments.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah, please let me know if there's a way to do that. Also, when adjusting a maneuver node, go to the MUN, for example, I find switching my point of focus to the MUN itself after I've gotten the trajectory pretty close, and then adjusting the node is the best, most precise way. Otherwise, my trajectory seems to be off, and I would either run into the MUN or miss it. Again, thanks to both of you for your time and commitment to keeping a great thing going. Keep on keeping on, Jim B.
That is that letter was just loaded with good advice.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, seriously, I've used everything that he said in there.
Yeah.
I've used the Alt F5 and Alt F9. I've used the scroll wheel. Although, that is a good idea about being able to use the plus and minus keys.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
So-
he was talking about holding some key and then hitting the arrow keys like left and right or up and down to make the adjustment. Yeah.
I think he's talking about, I suspect what he means is hover your cursor over the tab and then use the plus and minus.
Yeah,
and what would be nice about that is, how you can caps lock and then that gets you to fine tune? I suspect if you did it that way, you could caps lock and then use the plus and minus keys to really fine tune.
Yeah, to move it like 1 degree this way or whatever.
You think Squad is cursing us right now? Well, I am excited about our next letter, and here's why. Since the beginning, we have always said that if you wanted to record yourself and send us audio instead of a written letter, we would love to play it.
Did we get one?
We finally got 26 episodes in, and we finally got an audio letter. And I love this letter, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. And I'll let him do the talking.
Hello, my name is Thomas Eccles. I'm your biggest fan. I live in the north of Scotland, and I have one major question for you. What mods should I use to make my game more realistic? But please note, my computer is weird, and if I have too many mods on all at once, it won't work. My Kerbal Space program will just crash whenever I try to revert to the VAB. And trust me, that is really annoying. So if you could help me with this, I would be most grateful. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
Again, that's Thomas Eccles from Scotland. And thank you so much. I encourage people, send in audio letters.
Yeah.
We would love to play them.
Thanks, Thomas. That's awesome.
And he did ask a question. Recommend some mods to make it more realistic, but remember, he can't run a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, it can't be super taxing on his PC.
Yeah, so it needs to be, you need to recommend like the realistic mod or maybe two. So
okay,
anyway,
narrow down.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It was good to hear from you, and I encourage you to write back.
Good to literally hear from you.
Yeah, we literally heard from you. And again, folks, send us, just record yourself. If you want to record yourself on your smartphone and send us the audio, you want to send us an MP3, whatever, kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to literally hear from you. What's our next letter?
Okay, this one comes from Amy K.
All right.
A quick education for you. 0.02 is 2, pronounced 2p, would stand for 2 pence. A quid is to pounds what a buck is to dollars in the U.S. Just common slang for pounds. Hope that was educational, Amy K.
Yeah, you remember the question.
Yeah, we weren't sure exactly if it was 2 pence or
or
whatever the 2 cents over in
yeah.
Europe is. And we're about to get like a currency smackdown in the next few letters. They're all going to be like...
Just for reference, in case you haven't heard the last episode, what
Amazon
we're talking
converts
about
money for me anyway.
is it's the pound sign 0.02, and we were asking how do you say that, and it's 2 pence.
What's funny is the first time you said it, like whenever we last recorded it, and I looked at you like you were crazy, is because you were saying the pound sign, and I thought you meant like the pound sign on the telephone.
Oh.
Like the sign that...
like a hashtag.
Yeah, like that's now used for hashtags or whatever.
Right.
So I was like, pound sign? I thought we were talking about currency.
Mm-hmm. Amy is on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
And she said that, do you remember in the last episode, Homer to your mobile?
Uh-huh.
That's how YouTube closed captioned.
Yeah, I met Jim Lovell.
Yeah. Amy has suggested that fans of Kerbalcast should use Homer to your mobile as our secret handshake. If you say Homer to your mobile and the other person doesn't look at you like you're nuts, then it's a fellow Kerbalcast listener.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that's our secret handshake from now on. Homer to your mobile.
That's a worthy chance. A good chance we're taking. Looking like you're nuts to.
Hey, I say that's the new word to your mother.
Yeah.
Homer to your mobile. Okay, so I have the next letter. This one comes from @F1 Safety Cat. It says, "Hi Biff and Nos and Biff, or even Niff and Boss."
I never thought of that one.
Okay, in regards to your latest podcast, which was great as usual, as a British listener, I can confirm that pound 0.02 is the equivalent to the U.S. or Canadian my 2 cents worth, and obviously my 2 pence worth. In addition, I don't think Nosh should burn his bridge when he comes to it, but should cross the bridge when he comes to it. Also, in response to DK's bit on fine print being incorporated into stock, I was curious as to what the original modder gets from their idea being implemented. Do they just get credit, a kickback, or payment? Or is there a T&C clause for modders that states that Squad has the right to claim ownership on modules written to work on their game? You might not be allowed to answer that, but with Fine Print and Spaceplane Plus being incorporated, I can see either Caffeine or Carbonite coming soon. There's a lot of work in these mods, and I can't see Squad just saying, "Yeah, thanks for that work, bud. See ya." Thanks for keeping me company on my walks along the beach. Fly high without fuel tanks dry.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
side of.
I was going, huh? Yeah, because it said without. Okay, fly high without fuel tanks dry. Regards, @F1 Safety Cat.
Well, to answer on that one, talking about Spaceplane Plus.
I know they bought it, basically quote bought it.
Yeah, he
from
got
him.
compensation for that. So,
and then they said, "See ya, bud."
Yeah, then they said, "See ya." So yeah, from what I've understood and heard, because there was that one, and then there was also Fine Print. They've talked about like taking those guys on, and not necessarily that they work for Squad,
right?
But they basically pay them like it's a contract work. Mm-hmm. It's like, so they would pay them for, it's like, hey, yeah,
I had read that, isn't it? They've actually hired modders, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know exactly how the
like
contract process works, and
okay.
honestly, it doesn't really matter. If they're getting compensated, that's fine. But it's like, hey, they're basically saying, hey, we would like to make this an official part of the game. Here's compensation for being a part of the game.
Right.
The next one is from Adam. Hi, Nos. Good job on the show.
Hey!
I just discovered the podcast in the last month or so. I've been listening to it backwards when I started on the most recent, and it's been funny hearing the answers to questions and then discovering the question the next week. Oh, okay. He listens to like episode 22, then 21. He doesn't listen to the whole thing backwards. I was like, you're out of your mind.
Hey, it's Memento.
Yeah. I like the After Dark name. I used to be in a TF2 community that held Control Point After Dark, where people would drink fun pops and shoot each other.
Is that Team Fortress 2?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
TFT? TF2?
Yeah, TF2.
Okay.
Anyways, my question is, do you think they will leave it so that we have to do the science in our own ocean or a front lawn, on the runway, etc.? I find this takes me out of the game, and I feel silly doing it. I haven't listened to the entire backlog yet, so apologies if this has already been answered. I would really like if they retuned the early science and didn't require to take surface samples on our own front lawn.
Oh.
Thanks, Adam. May trouble never enter your sphere of influence.
Well, Adam, you have to understand, that is in there for a reason. That's a test. The Kerbals that cannot get that part right, they're out.
Oh.
If you can't figure out how to go get a sample from the front lawn,
yeah,
they won't let you do the harder stuff.
It's like
so it's in there to winnow out the to weed out the weak.
It was, I don't know, finding the very first sample.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you have your guy get out, like, hey, what's EVA do? And all of a sudden you fall out on the runway, and you're like, splat. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I'll walk around. And you right click, and oh, surface sample.
Or like on Gilly, where you just slide forever.
Yeah, I think those are always like that first surface sample kind of teaches you, oh, okay, I need to right click everywhere I walk.
Right.
You know. There are some where, like, how the runway has a different one from the launch pad, which is a different one from like the flagpole and near the porta potty and all that kind of stuff. It's like they're all so different. It's like there's almost too many in a congested space.
Right.
But for the most part, it feels sort of necessary to at least have something that's just so close that you could accidentally run into it.
Easy money.
Yeah.
You know, we actually, we kind of, have you noticed we back into inside jokes? We have backed into one. I made the comment about, because we always say Biff and Nos, and I started saying, we should start, I mean, I shouldn't always be first. We should, Nos and Biff and Nos, whatever. So we have the letter that you just read where they just said Nos and not Biff.
Yeah.
Next letter, Dear Nos and Biff.
Hey.
So we have, this is our latest inside joke.
Like the two inside jokes on a typical letter is how they say hello to us and how they say goodbye.
Yeah, the sign off. That's gotten to be a big one. Dear Nos and Biff, it's Peekaboo again. I've had quite a few things I wanted to write following last week's episode, but real life is, well,
awful. Real life is awful. Play video games.
How did you know? Well, let's just say I'd love to play KSP for a living. I would too. Just wanted to touch. You know what though? It wouldn't be fun.
I'd be fired. I would have been fired by now. Because one, I would have shown up late, and two,
you would have shown up drunk.
I would have shown up drunk. I am not a good employee. I'm not.
You know, as much as I enjoy playing Kerbal, if it was my job, it'd probably like.
What would I complain about? I gotta have a job to complain about.
I gotta go do this. What? Go to Eeloo again?
I want to go back to collating papers. I want to flip copies.
I want to join a union. Just wanted to. I've lost my place. I have totally lost my place.
Don't ruin a perfectly good letter.
Yeah, that's what. Okay. I'm not going to say what I was thinking. Okay. Here we go. He says, real life. Well, let's just say I'd love to play KSP for a living. Just wanted to touch on the Spaceplanes issue Nos brought up. And I encourage you to stay tuned because we have a Spaceplane segment coming up. KSP atmospheric model is not realistic. It was discussed and again pretty much everywhere, but I wanted to present a simple example which would help people understand just how unrealistic it is. In 1983, an F-15 fighter jet was successfully landed after having a mid-air collision with another fighter jet, which disabled one of its two side-by-side engines and sheared its right side wing completely off. Good Lord. Right down to the wing root. Try to do that on KSP. Now, this is indeed a real-life one-of-a-kind, but considering that in KSP, just having one of your jet engines stall due to lack of air immediately throws you into a flat spin. Yeah, not realistic. The simple solution is using a center-mounted engine, either alone or as a last one standing, after turning all other jets off via action groups before your intake air runs out. Intake air is handled like any other resource. A jet engine needs a minimal amount of air. Multiply this amount by the number of jets you have working at a given time, and you get the minimum air requirement. As soon as your intake air drops below that number, your jets would start to stall. And their asynchronous stalling is intentional to make things fun. Smiley face. You can see the amount of intake air you have on the in-flight resource panel to the top right. Have a great flight, and don't let the Kraken bite. Pikachu. No, I'm sorry, Peekaboo. Good Lord.
Was that a slip, or was that intentional?
No, that was a slip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I revert. For some reason, Pokemon just...
Yeah.
Anyway. So that's Peekaboo.
Okay.
Not Pikachu. Do you have the next letter?
Yeah. Hi, Nos and Biff. Thanks for another great episode, guys. And
Nos and Biff.
On science, the story with the regular command pods is that you can only store one copy of any experiment. An experiment is a scientific observation, goo report, EVA report, negative gravioli reading, anything like that, in a situation in a biome. So, goo report while landed at the Mun's northwest crater is an experiment. You can only store one copy at a time unless you're using the mobile science lab, as Mittenpo already pointed out. It's a
nice little call.
Referencing one of our other writers. You can store different experiments even if they're from the same equipment. So you could store the landed goo report and a goo report from space near the Mun, for example. Often the best way to get max science from a single mission is to transmit one copy of the experiment and then return a second copy. On getting captured, Dres needs a lot of fuel to get captured around compared there's an accidental space compared to Duna, Kerbin, or Jool, not because of its gravity but more because of its lack of atmosphere. To be captured, get in a closed orbit around any body, it's necessary to slow down enough to be below escape velocity. On bodies with atmospheres, aero braking can provide most of the impulse to bring velocity down. Dres doesn't have Atmo, so 100% of the impulse has to come from the ship's engines. This costs a lot of fuel, of course. In the current stock game, aero braking is very easy because you don't have to worry about atmospheric shock heating. If re-entry heating is implemented in stock, or if you use DRE, Joule suddenly gets a lot harder. On our key bindings question, I only change a couple of bindings. I switch fine controls from caps lock to P. The main reason being that I use a Japanese 106 key keyboard, so I need to hit Shift to activate caps lock, and that's probably not a good idea. I also assign slash to cut engines as well as X because I find my hand covers up X when I have my fingers on WASD. I can use my right hand to cut the engines if I put it on the slash key. On docking, to prevent the problem of accidentally throttling up when trying to translate in docking mode, try shutting down the main engines when you're within docking range, within 5 to 100 meters of your target, and only use RCS from there on.
I've done that, and then after a while I get out of the habit.
Oh, yeah. Have a great day, guys. May you always have fuel, power, and snacks. From Alex.
Our next letter is from Run Phil Run, and apparently we need to go back to episode 25 from 32 minutes and 7 seconds to 32 minutes and 15 seconds. He says, quote, "That's what she said."
Oh.
I have no idea what...
I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check that.
Oh, I have a feeling I'm going to go back to that, and then I'm going to, wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, Run Phil Run. Hey, guys, a few random comments this week. Loved Dark Matters. And I loved the After Dark historic audio clips. I fully support having the entire podcast in that voice. In general, I like the casual atmosphere of this whole segment.
I say we just do our news stories like that. If we ever have a news story in the mission briefing.
This is Biff Barnes with... in the Spotlight, spotlighting sports.
This is
Spotlight Spotlight.
This is Nos Brokaw with your list.
This is Nos Brokaw. Okay. I like the casual atmosphere of the whole segment. He's talking about After Dark.
Yeah.
Or After Dark.
Kerbal.
After the credits. Yeah. Kerbal After Dark. Without you guys feeling like you have to finish the segment on time, it's great to hear relaxed conversation. I really like what you've done with After Dark. After hearing your discussions of sci-fi art right after the history segment, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about historic predictions of the future. For example, 2001: A Space Odyssey versus real-life 2001 technology. I was reading an old Isaac Asimov short story a couple of years back, and I was amused because they had, I think it was written in 1945, but the story was taking place in 1995, and it involved a mail run between the Earth and Venus. It was like postmen
like
in
couriers,
space. Yeah. And I just, I laughed at the idea that, he projected 50 years into the future that we would have apparently a mail service going from, and physical mail too. That was, it was like, we were still carrying letters from the Earth. But it's funny. It's like with Star Trek, Khan. Remember Khan in, was it 95 where he was supposed to have led his eugenics revolution?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
which I'm sure seemed a long ways away in 1968.
In like tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, there's one called Shadowrun where it's like there's like all this cyber tech, and it's kind of like Blade Runner-esque,
right? Right.
And it's like this cyberpunk stuff, and it's like 2070 or something like that. And they just got these new things that you can hook on your ear, and you can access the internet, and you can exchange emails, and you can go like, this thing was made in the 80s, and it's all the things that phone can do now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's 70 years.
I'd have to double check, but you mentioned Blade Runner. Doesn't that take place in 2015?
Maybe.
I'd have to double check, but I think it's 2015.
If you go to some places, there's enough neon to make you believe it.
Yeah. Well, apparently it always rains in Los Angeles now.
Yeah.
Back to Run, Phil, Run. He says, congratulations on over 6 months of podcasting. Yeah, this week makes 6 months.
Yeah, that's 6 months of podcast.
So
weird.
I'm not sure how that. We're episode 26. I'm not sure, and we skipped a week.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how that. Technically, this would be episode 27 if we hadn't skipped. So I'm not sure how that works out week wise. I had made the joke because he was defending She Who Must Not Be Named, and I had made the joke
that he was
trying to avoid being.
he was getting a get out of the revolution free card.
Yes. He didn't want to be hauled in front of a kangaroo court. Which, by the way, do you know what that means now?
Yeah, I know what that means now.
Okay. Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
That was a kangaroo court. Okay.
So the Scarecrow's the judge in the kangaroo court.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he does not have a kangaroo tail.
No.
Okay. Just death by exile.
Yeah.
Quote, I can neither confirm nor deny my efforts towards self-preservation in the event of the inevitable conquest and subsequent purges led by our one true leader. Hail the Dark Lord. Run, Phil, run. This message will now self-destruct.
All right, we got a news story. It looks like we'll not only be getting a new Star Wars movie in 2015, we'll also be getting a new Star Wars video game. According to EA Games, Star Wars Battlefront 3 will be released sometime in the fall, close to the theatrical release date of Star Wars Episode 7.
Which has a title now.
This will be the first new Battlefront game in 10 years. Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out in 2005 to coincide with Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Did you hear that Episode 7 has a new title?
What is that title?
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens.
Just to show you what a complete nerd I am, when they announced that title, I immediately tweeted out that the first Star Wars movie in each trilogy has a 3-word title. The Phantom Menace, A New Hope, and now The Force Awakens.
As long as they say, I've got a bad feeling about this, everything's good.
If they hold to the pattern, the next 2 movies will each have 4-word subtitles.
Oh.
Attack of the Clones, Empire Strikes Back, Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So if they're following that pattern, the next 2 will have 4-word.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is why I never had dates growing up. It's me, right?
Yep.
Okay, this one comes from Skyzar. Hail, Skyzar!
Hail, Skyzar!
Hi, all. Having thoroughly enjoyed Kerbal Cast 25, I have some notes. Firstly, the pound sign in the 2 is, of course, 2... Yeah, I'm tired of reading that. It is, of course, 2 pence, pronounced tuppence. In fact, modern speech has failed to keep up with inflation, and usually you'll just get a half penny's worth, pronounced hapeth.
I think he's messing with you.
He may be.
Those aren't words.
Yeah, maybe he sent me the link to She Who Must Not Be Named. And the way things are going, you should treasure it. You asked for tips that people have discovered after playing the game for a while. I have only just learned that you can use the Shift key and the VAB to rotate parts 5 degrees at a time. I just couldn't figure out how people were building some of the ships I was seeing on YouTube while mine were all at right angles. I didn't know that. Did you?
No.
We're learning. See, this is when I thanked the listenership earlier. Yeah. This is the stuff I'm learning. I seem to recall that in Kerbalcast 24, you promised some spaceplane building tips, and it's coming. Well, I've been trying to put together something that will fly, and if there is a way to attach control surfaces in such a way as they will work, I don't know what it is. I would be grateful to any of your legion of listeners who can help me with this. Thanks again for the great podcast. TTFN Skyzar.
TTFN.
I think.
Oh!
What? What is that?
No, is that the one we have the acronym house for?
I don't know. I don't know. TTFN. Talk to Fun Nos. Talk to Fun
Talk
Nos.
to Fun Nos. You know what? Fun Nos has a letter for you. This one comes from Crater. Hey guys, thanks for another great episode. Point 25 was great as always. It's funny because we had 0.25 and it's 25.
Oh yeah, oh that's true.
So for a second there I saw a period and then 25 and I was like, oh yeah, 0.25.
Yeah, that was cool.
So episode 25 was great as always, though I may need therapy to get the leapfrog image out of my head.
You and me both.
Though I did get another letter read out, so that makes up for it. As a UK listener, I can confirm that 0.02 is 2 pence. The pounds are the bit before the decimal. The pence come after it like dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. Pounds and pence.
Huppence, putzence.
For fully
fluppence.
goofy, fuel hoses are linked landed ships can be found in the mod Kerbal Attachment System, usually known as KAS. It's a really cool mod that lets your little guys carry things around an EVA and stick them onto ships. So if you, say, forget that antenna or battery or whatever, you can ship up a spare part and install it. One of the parts you can do this with is a pipe end joint for making fuel hoses. And don't worry, if Nos ever can't make it for an episode, you can always get Mike Hitt to be your co-host. Homer to your mobile, Crater.
We had to think about that, didn't we?
Yeah, whenever I first read it, I was like, is that some prolific podcaster that it has low standards?
Well, I mean,
we
were both going, who's Mike Hitt? And then I went, oh yeah. Because I always hit the mic at some point. Okay. Next letter. This comes from John, and he says, I recently found your podcast and love it so far. I started listening at episode 1, my apologies, and I am only at episode 8, so I'm sorry if this question has since been answered. Early on, there were a couple of references to attempting to land on the Mun, and how that was sidetracked by learning how to rendezvous because, to paraphrase, quote, you need to be able to rendezvous to land on the Mun. My question is, why is that? That concept is never explained or expanded upon. I guess I'm just not seeing at what point you need to rendezvous. Any more explanation would be great. Thanks, John. And I wrote him back, but I wanted to talk about this in the podcast as well. As I said, if you do what NASA calls direct ascent, which is you take the same craft from the launch pad on Kerbin to the landing on the Mun and then bring it all the way back to Kerbin, there's no need for rendezvous.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, that means a larger ship and more fuel. And larger ship, obviously, heavier. And in this game, weight and fuel obviously go hand in hand.
Yeah, and now that parts cost you money, it's probably best to use as few as possible or make sure they're all efficiently used.
And fuel costs you money too, because you get a value for the amount you have left that you bring back. If you do, NASA called it lunar orbital rendezvous. I'm obviously calling it mooner orbital rendezvous. But if you do that, you don't need as much fuel. You take a small lander with you. You basically have a smaller ship, less fuel. You get off the ground. You get into mooner orbit. You take a small craft down to the surface, back up, rendezvous with the other ship, and then return to Kerbin. Again, you save fuel because that large ship is not deorbiting and landing. So the mooner orbital rendezvous is what I was talking about when I said that you need to rendezvous. You don't literally have to rendezvous, but if you're looking to save weight and fuel, rendezvous is the way to go. And as I said in the letter, direct ascent becomes even more prohibitive when you travel to other planets in the solar system. The amount of fuel required to take one ship to Duna and back is massive. Without some kind of rendezvous, you are lugging a lot of weight around. So, to answer your question, rendezvous isn't required per se, but it is a useful way of maximizing your fuel and weight budgets. Without rendezvous, you can't make refueling stops, and you carry more weight to the surface. It's one of the most useful skills to have in the game. And as I had said, once you learn how to rendezvous, it's like riding a bike. Once you figure it out, some little part of your lizard brain, once it catches on how to do it, you'll always be able to do it. So anyway, Rendezvous is a very useful tip. So, and I hope that answers your question. Again, that comes to us from John. So what do you have?
I got a tweet from @ThisIsAlexBoyd. Hold down Alt in the VAB to disable surface attachment when placing docking ports. That'll force them to snap to nodes. Okay, that's actually good to know. Because I was talking about how those things are so fiddly. It's like I try to get them centered up and it just looks ugly. So,
we'd asked for tips.
Yeah. So no, that's good. I'll be using that.
What is it? It's hold down Alt
whenever you're placing stuff.
Gotcha.
You know, I don't know if there's a button for it, but something that I've kind of wanted the button for is placing ladders. You know, you place the one little ladder segment and then you got to place another one.
Right.
Like in games like Civilization kind of games, you know, like God View kind of games where you're building stuff. Like if you want to build a road, you click and you drag.
Right.
Like I wish there's a button where you can click and drag and it would place like
a row of
like a row of ladders.
How much do you want to bet that we are going to get a letter from somebody telling us exactly how to do that?
Yeah, or a letter from people saying, you know how awful that would be? Your ship would be ladders.
Chutes and ladders.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, well, we're going to close out Mission Briefing with a news story, and this comes from the website newstatesman.com. And this is a shortened edit of the full article. I recommend that you go and actually read the full article because it is a good article. But it is called Kerbal Space Program and Early Access. Would you pay money for a video game that isn't finished? And if you would like to read this article, by the way, we tweeted out a link to it, so just check our Twitter feed. Again, it's newstatesman.com. And this is the article. Quote, Kerbal Space Program has been one of the early access success stories, although not without its frustrations. Buy a video game before it's finished. Buy it while it hasn't been properly tested or checked for bugs. Buy it when there's no guarantee it will ever reach a finished state. Buy it based on a list of features that aren't even in development yet. Buy it and run the risk that if it ever is finished, if it ever does deliver on the promised features list and actually work, that you'll be too burned out to actually play it anymore. Such is the premise of the early access game. In principle, it sounds like a terrible idea. And really, the notion of paying full price for a game so you can effectively fulfill the role of its quality assurance test team should be offensive. And yet the practice remains common and popular, with good reason. That reason is that sometimes when early access works, there's something special about it. One such game is Kerbal Space Program. It's nearly at the end of its 3-year period of alpha development, with its next update taking it into beta. Fans of the game have been able to watch it change from a relatively limited space rocket simulator into one of the most affable yet challenging games around. The journey for Kerbal Space Program from a player's perspective has not always been a smooth one, and it is worth remembering that even when a great game comes through early access in the way that KSP has, it will bring its share of problems. For example, an irregular update schedule compared to a game that plays best when modified can be very annoying, as it requires a player to wait for their mods to be updated too. You can't complain about this sort of problem with an early access game, as it goes with the territory, but it is typical of the sort of frustration that you just have to suck up. A second problem you get to deal with during early access is when a game just doesn't work properly. This is still the case at the time of this writing with the 64-bit Windows version of Kerbal Space Program, which provides a friendly prompt to this effect should you try to run it. Perhaps the most insidious flaw of early access, however, is the loss of enthusiasm that can happen for playing a game, even a great one, over time. I feel this quite strongly with Kerbal Space Program. The game has an incredible strong set of core mechanics relating to building, launching, and flying spacecraft. And because that core hasn't changed much, the game isn't as fresh or exciting for me now as it would be if it was new to me, even if the game is more advanced. To play Kerbal Space Program now, to me, feels like watching a movie whose script I have already read. I may enjoy it, I may be surprised and even amazed by some parts of it, but it remains familiar ground. You can't unplay the game, and you can't get that new car smell back. This isn't all gloom, though. While there is a risk that you might play a game to death before it's actually finished, Playing a game that is undergoing continual development can keep the experience fresh in a way that you can't get playing something that's already finished. Kerbal Space Program will be remembered alongside Minecraft as one of the greats of what we now call early access. It is worth remembering that for every game that gets it right, there will be plenty that get it wrong. Again, that is a very edited version of the full article. You can find it on newstatesman.com. Would you pay money for a video game that isn't finished?
No.
You're doing it right now.
I'm podcasting about what it's not finished.
Well, that's true.
Okay, I got one last letter.
Yes.
This comes from Wanderfound. Hey guys, see attached for an attempt at a Spaceplane guide for the podcast. Let me know what you think of it.
G'day folks, this is Wanderfound. Biff and Nos asked me to chip in with some tips on how you can have fun with spaceplanes in Kerbal Space Program. I'll get on to how to build them later, but I'm going to start with how to fly them. If you don't already have something to fly, go have a look at the online Kerbal forums. If you look in the design threads there, you'll find plenty of nice ships, and there's also usually at least one design competition going on in the challenge threads. Before I start, I need to mention two extremely popular mods, Ferrum's Aerospace Research and its little brother Neophyte's Elementary Aerodynamics Replacement. If you're getting into spaceplanes, I can't emphasise enough how much you should consider giving one of these mods a try. The stock aerodynamics model is an extremely crude placeholder system that Squad themselves recognise is in need of fixing. This is what Far and Near do. They massively improve the way in which the game deals with aerodynamic forces, and they make your planes behave like they really should. However, the basic approach needed for flying a spaceplane to orbit is pretty much the same regardless of which aerodynamic system you're using, so the tips I'm about to give should be applicable to everyone flying planes in KSP. Assuming that you've got yourself a flyable spaceplane, the next question is how to fly it. The most important thing to remember is that a spaceplane is not a rocket. If you try and fly it the same way you would a normal Kerbal rocket, it just isn't going to work. The key is to understand that an orbit is not just an altitude, an orbit is also a speed. Getting a spaceplane to orbit is all about extracting as much speed and altitude as you can from the fuel-efficient jet engines, so that you can minimise the use of your fuel-hungry rockets. Your first job is to get up out of the lower atmosphere soup. Climb to 20,000 metres pretty much however you like. Especially with larger planes, a fairly shallow ascent is usually best, but small overpowered sporty things can often get away with a near vertical climb. However, no matter what you're flying, the more horizontal speed you're carrying when you get to 20,000 metres, the easier and quicker you'll find things afterwards. Once you do get to 20 thou, flatten out and start building speed. Your angle of attack is the difference between where your plane's nose is pointing and your surface prograde vector, the direction your plane's actually moving. You want to keep this angle as low as possible while you're still gently climbing. The idea is to pile on as much speed as possible before you get to 30 kilometres. By the time you hit that 30 kilometre altitude, your plane should be doing at least 1500 metres a second, which is about Mach 4. If you're having trouble getting up to that speed, you're probably trying to climb too fast. Flatten out, give yourself more time to accelerate. By the time you hit that 30 kilometre altitude, you usually want the rate at which you're gaining more altitude to be less than 50 metres a second. Somewhere between 30 and 35 kilometres, your jets are going to start to run short of intake air. Don't switch to rockets immediately. If you've got multiple engines running, shut some of them down so that you can concentrate the intake air into the ones that you keep on. If you've already shut down as many as you can, wind the throttle down a bit. You can substantially increase your top speed and altitude by doing this. Keep flying as flat as you can while still climbing. The lower the angle of attack, the less drag and the more speed. Keeping your intakes pointed into the wind also helps your engines to breathe. You may find that occasionally you struggle to keep the plane climbing and then it starts to descend no matter what you do. That's okay. All it means is that you weren't going fast enough to maintain a climb at that altitude. As your plane descends, you should continue to accelerate, and so long as you keep your nose a little bit above the horizon, your drop should eventually flatten out and turn back into a climb. A good pilot can get to orbit in a single smooth climb, but if you do need to bounce up and down a bit while you're building speed, it's not that big a deal. Eventually, however, you'll come to a height where there just isn't enough air to run a jet anymore, and then it's time to light the fireworks. When you do, don't shut your jets off immediately, because the thrust from your rockets is going to push the plane into the wind and drive a ram air effect that should temporarily bring the jets back to life. Once they do eventually choke for good, however, shut them down and close the intakes because that'll reduce the drag. In the rocket phase, you want to pull the nose up and climb up into the almost frictionless zone up above 50,000 metres. Once you get there, flatten out again and continue to pile on speed. Keep slowly climbing and try to get your periapsis as high as you can before your apoapsis gets over 70 kilometres. Once it does, start flying it like a normal rocket. Shut down your engines, point prograde to minimise the drag, coast to apoapsis, and do a circularisation burn. If you do it right, all of this actually requires very little fuel. A good plane and pilot should be able to get to orbit with only a minute or two of actual rocketry. But if you try and brute force it by activating the rockets without first building the required speed and altitude, the atmospheric drag is going to drain your oxidizer tanks and you will not go to space today. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'll be back later on with some hints on how to construct space planes, as well as some tips on re-entry and landing. See you later, folks. Keep having fun. Be good to each other.
So that was Wanderfound's Flight School. And hey, we want to say thanks a bunch for writing in about that. We talk a lot about how we don't have any spaceplane experts. Yeah. And so having something like that's like really awesome.
I think, wasn't it like 2 episodes back that we had mentioned that
like,
we were...
Somebody make a segment.
Yeah,
you know, like somebody just, send us a minute or two or something.
We need help.
Yeah.
And then somebody responded.
And there you go. And anyway, it was good.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah. So, hey, if you ever want to make anything else Wanderfound, we look forward to hearing from you if you do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so now it's time for the Shea Challenge. I have 2 challenges this week. One is for those who have a more capable computer. For said people, I want you to build a building and park it somewhere in the Space Center. Build whatever you want, a hotel for your Kerbals, a bar, maybe park it over the new pool and make a luxury spa. Do whatever you think needs to be added to the Space Center. For the second challenge, it's time to test your skill. I want you to use the Spaceplane's hangar and build a vehicle that goes as fast as you can make it go. The rules. The vehicle can't leave the ground. 2, its speed when it reaches the end of the runway is the final speed unless you crash whenever you explode. And 3, I don't think this needs saying, but in case, it must have vanilla KSP wheels. All hail the Kraken. So you're making a drag racer.
Okay.
You're essentially drag racing on the strip.
Sounds like it.
So... No, that's gonna Okay, so tweet us that at Kerbalcast. You can also tag Shea.
I would be. I would also say that make sure that you have good solid steering on that thing, because when you get going fast and you start to veer, that runway's not that wide. And it doesn't take much to go off to the side of it.
Yeah.
Now, building a building. Do you? I guess you do that in the VAB.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I guess maybe you just put the girders together and then maybe put some wings from the space planes on there and stuff to make walls.
Like new wave housing?
Yeah, and then I don't know how you airlift it there or something.
I don't know. Maybe you put it on the back of your drag racer.
Yeah, there you go. That'll get it going. Okay, so that ends the Shea Challenge, and that wraps it up for Kerbalcast episode 26, Rockets and Other Useless Machines. First off, we want to give some thanks to all of our listeners and our contributors, Shea Byram, Dark Mushroom, Wanderfound with the Spaceplane segment we got today, and all of our regular contributors.
Also, we do want to thank Squad, as usual. A great game. It is what I have instead of a life, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having a great time with this, and obviously, we would not be doing the podcast if we didn't.
And
we
wouldn't have such a great community if it weren't for that too.
Absolutely. So you guys is great.
Yeah, we want to thank the subreddit moderators at KSP and Kerbal Academy. And for Ascalon for posting episodes of the Kerbalcast to YouTube with closed captioning. So for those of us that have a hard time understanding anything we're saying, or if you can't hear us at all, then you can go there and you can actually see it in print.
Technically that would be either one of us too.
Yes,
because I'm not sure I always understand.
Yeah, I don't understand half the things I say.
If I one of these, I want to actually get in there and read some more closed captioning
to see if we have
because I just randomly clicked around
occurrences.
episode 1, and that's where I came up with Homer to your mobile.
With all the weird, all the different like usernames people have us say, some of them could come out real weird.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to see how they translate Misha, Micah, Mika.
Yeah.
Like how it translates all those.
You know what'll happen, don't you? We'll get a letter from Renfield Wren saying that's what she said.
Okay, so if you ever want to be any part of this, if you want to have any of your letters read, or if you want to actually record something, like one of our favorite listeners we had on this episode, you can contact us at kerbalpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at Kerbalcast.
And I will tell you, if you follow us on Twitter, this usually happens on the weekends, you will get pictures of missions in progress from me.
Yeah.
I live tweeted my trip to Moho, And hey, should I play the Gilly?
No, you should not.
Okay. And I live tweeted my mission to Gilly. As I said, I am on my way to Eeloo. I've got a couple of pictures that I'm going to start uploading here soon. But yeah, if you follow us on Twitter, you can kind of follow along on some of my missions as well.
You can also subscribe to us on iTunes or download episodes directly from kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com. And you can also search Kerbal Podcast on YouTube to find us there, and you can see us through closed captioning and also get some of those pictures that were on the Twitter.
Yeah. And again, Ascalon, thank you so much for putting us on YouTube.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Well, that wraps it up for episode 26 of Kerbal Cast, Rockets and Other Useless Machines. If you've seen the movie Interstellar, that will make perfect sense to you.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, stay tuned for After the Credits, because Nos and I are going to talk about the movie. We have both seen it. We have not had any conversation at all about what we thought of the movie. So I'm going to be hearing it the first time you're going to be hearing it. So,
and that's
coming up after the credits.
If you haven't seen the movie, just go ahead and wait and just listen to the very end of the podcast after you've seen it, because we're going to talk about everything.
Oh, this is going to be spoiler-tastic.
Yeah. So
spoilerific.
So we'll see you after the credits.
Okay, very good. I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Until next time,
happy Kerbaling.
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
And yes, it is, or as Nos likes to call it,
Kerbal After Dark.
Okay, I am dying to know. You saw Interstellar just a few hours ago.
Yes.
What's your opinion?
Man, it was great. I have to say that is my favorite Nolan movie.
Really?
Done. Yeah. Which is weird, because
That's a tall order.
I don't know if I would watch it as often as I would watch some of his other movies, but I will say that one is my favorite thus far.
I will say Christopher Nolan is quickly becoming one of my favorite directors.
Yeah.
Because I want you to think about something, all right?
Uh-huh.
Memento, Insomnia, Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar. That is an impressive roster.
Yeah, that's a hell of a resume.
That is any one of those films would be impressive for a director.
Like if somebody just made one and done, you'd be like, man, I wish he'd make more stuff.
Yeah.
And he did, and it's good. And it's not like it's, on a decline.
I told you that I was worried. This is the kind of thing I worry about.
Yeah.
I was worried after the Dark Knight, which was such a good movie. After Inception, which was such a good movie.
Uh-huh.
I was worried. I thought to myself, Christopher Nolan has yet to make a bad movie. Dear God, don't let it be the final Dark Knight, the final Batman in the trilogy.
Yeah.
I could just see it being Return of the Jedi, Batman fights Ewoks.
Uh-huh.
And no, Dark Knight Rises...
He'd win, though.
Was a great yeah, that's true. Dark Knight Rises, great film. Okay, well then now along comes, it's like he's done with his Batman trilogy. So now it's time to go off on an original story.
Yeah.
And this is what he comes up with.
It's good.
I will say now, my initial reaction when I was watching it, my first thought was, I thought the first act dragged. Okay? Until the movie ended. And then I saw how all the pieces came together.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Now I don't think the first act drags at all.
Any movie where time is an element,
Yeah.
and it's not just the passage of time, it's looking at time as anything, usually the first act is building a lot to be shown in the last one. So, like, whenever they started talking about time, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I will say I was nervous when they finally blasted off and headed for the wormhole.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, okay, so the plot device that got everything moving was a supernatural force telling him all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, if that holds true through the second and third act, that will be, even if the second and third act is great, that will always be a black mark on the movie because, a ghost told me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about the laziest storytelling trick you can pull.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, if that's how they're going to get this story in motion,
yeah,
that will forever be a black mark on this movie. And then to find out what it really was in the third act, it was like, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will say, this movie reminded very, very much of old science fiction novels. This, to me, was like something you would have read from Isaac Asimov or Ray Bradbury or Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah, classic sci-fi was really huge on like, hey, we're going to chew this concept to pieces.
Right.
And there's going to be some things that may not make sense, but those are all just like minute details, forget about them.
And we're going to go to different places, and we're going to have different problem sets.
Yeah.
And we're going to have different set pieces.
Yeah, because each little set piece is going to have some little issue that is going to need to be resolved.
Right.
And then there's like an overlying concept and a whole bunch of little problems.
And now, I will say, I don't think that the movie was original in the sense that all of the concept, everything that's in that movie, I've seen somewhere before.
Yeah.
Not necessarily put together that way. What he did with it is what's original. And I give him a lot of props for that. When that movie ended, I wanted to turn around and watch it again.
Yeah.
Which is the same experience I had with Inception. Same thing with The Prestige. The minute those movies end and all the pieces click into place, you want to go back and watch it again. And some of what I'm going to talk about now, I may revise my opinion once I've seen it a second time, because I have a feeling this movie needs to be seen more than once. You need to see it once just to see what happens. Then you need to see it a second time to pick up the nuances.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling this thing's got nuances out behind. So
yeah,
that's my thought.
Okay.
Now, I know you. You have picked up some color. You've got some theory about the color palette or something.
It wasn't the color palette. There are a few things I want to commend. The first thing we're going to bring up, though, is the one thing that does get me a little bit about Nolan.
Okay.
If you ever watch a Zack Snyder film, the way that he emphasizes impact is he slows everything down right before it happens.
Right.
Like the explosion in Watchmen or everything in 300. Like it slows it down. Nolan, he really likes to put emphasis on stress or anything like that with if on the sound meter voices are hitting 2 in the red, music is going to hit 4 to 5 in the red.
Right.
So he tends to drown out his the sound of people speaking with how just freaking loud the music is.
Well, if you thought Bane was hard to understand, imagine a rocket going off behind him.
Yeah, and it's like you have your Inception blongs and stuff like that. He really likes theater, shaking loud noise. And that's cool, but you got to get your audio levels at least decent to where you can hear things, unless you're trying to convey that it's so loud they can't hear each other. If you have 2 people screaming and they can't hear each other, it's okay to have really loud music and sound. But otherwise, the music isn't, is a set piece that's like added as an emphasis to things, but you need to be able to hear what people are saying. Otherwise, the only thing that comes into mind is, man, the music's loud. It's kind of like a 3D movie.
Right.
It's really hard to get people to not go, oh, that's cool 3D effects on this 3D movie, instead of being immersed in like people want you to.
I was curious what you thought about that because, see, I saw it in IMAX.
Yeah.
And honestly, my teeth are still rattling.
Yeah. See,
anytime like the rockets launched or something like that, I mean, it was like the vibrations went through my bones.
Yeah, it was like that. I didn't see it in IMAX, but I saw it in just a normal theater, and it was like some like bigger screen experience thing. But yeah, it was not a full IMAX or anything. But it had that thing to where every now and then, I went there with my girlfriend, and every now and then we'd sort of give each other a glance, like, "Did you catch that?" No,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I understand the gist of what the person said, but the full extent of the writing was lost on me because I was just like, I think he's talking about this.
The only downside to IMAX, and you get this on the home versions too, like the Blu-ray of Dark Knight does this as well. When it's IMAX, it looks great.
Yeah.
But they keep switching between standard and IMAX. And there are points, the fact that it keeps jumping from this gigantic square in front of you to this smaller rectangle, it keeps jumping back and forth, and that occasionally that gets a little distracting.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but if you've watched, for example, the Dark Knight Blu-ray, you will see that a lot. It'll switch aspect ratios back and forth. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so let's just talk about the story.
Okay.
And what we thought of the story. Do you have anything you want to say, or before I go into the spiel?
Do your spiel, because I have something I want to say, but I want to make sure.
Okay, so we don't step each other's toes. So here are the really big things, like the big concepts that I was just crazy about.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have, they start talking about things that are precious, the things they're holding on to. They have all these resources, and they're trying to hold on to them.
Right.
And they, they eventually reach the point to where they're not, Earth isn't, Earthlings, humans are not reaching for new things.
Right.
They're trying to grasp and not let go of the few things they have left, instead of moving on, instead of being the journeymen and, explorers that, we have always been. We're now like, let's settle down in the fort and hold on to as much as we can.
Right.
Well, they go venturing out, and they find these other worlds and these other planets. And at one point, you hear about Anne Hathaway's character is one of the people on the mission. And they reach a point to where they can only choose between two worlds. And she reveals that there's one world that she thinks they should go to of the two. And it does not have as good readings as the other one. And they're like, why would we go to that one? And it's eventually revealed,
my boyfriend's on it.
Yeah, I love the person that was sent there to do it. And I haven't seen them in years, but I love them. And they're like, well, that's not an objective thing to measure something like that. But she says, maybe that's the only thing that we should measure things by. Because she said, if you think about it, I love somebody that I haven't seen in 10 years, and they could be dead. We love people who are dead. That does not do anything to serve us as a species.
Right.
And
there's no evolutionary.
Yeah, we love people who are dead more than people who aren't alive yet. That is the opposite of conducive to a future-based strategy. And so talking about like this, love that she has, and she thinks that may be the thing that transgresses all these dimensions that, we're talking about, we're dealing with, because they keep referring to this they. They showed us this, and they never, like, who's they? And then they instantly get distracted, or they're like, we don't know who they is. But they are giving us these opportunities to find things. And she's like, maybe that's the one thing that like goes beyond these three dimensions that we're stuck in.
Well, Christopher Nolan has said that 2001: A Space Odyssey obviously is an influence on this movie. And I know you haven't seen...
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I think I got. Part of the plot of 2001 is that there is a they in that movie as well that takes primitive human beings and plants an idea in their head. You can use tools. And then from that simple idea comes this spacefaring civilization that we eventually become by 2001.
Yeah.
And when we're ready, they give us the next piece of the puzzle. And we ascend to a higher order of being. And the implication throughout much of Interstellar is that's who the they are. It's this kind of chariots of the gods thing where you've got these, I guess, seeders, or this, you've got an alien race that has gone through the galaxy and has kind of seeded life here and there. And they're keeping watch on us. They're overseeing us. We're running out of resources on Earth. So they give us a wormhole that allows us to go and find a new home.
Yeah.
That's the implication. Of course, we find out they is somebody completely different later.
Yeah. And I'm going to say what that is. And if you're already listening, you've been spoiled enough. So we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
So she says, love goes across all of these things. And said, well, we're going to go with the most logical thing.
Right.
And it turns out it does not work out in their favor.
Yeah.
So where it eventually ends up is he ends up throwing himself into the black hole because he's like, I'm going to take the chance on this insane measure that may get me to see my family again, because no matter what, that's the one thing he won't let go of. You know, it's like humanity won't let go of Earth. He won't let go of seeing his family again to the point of putting the future of his species in danger. Mm-hmm. It's like he's, instead of visiting both planets and doing plan B for the population bomb, he wants to visit one and hope it turns out right so he can go home. Mm-hmm. You know, so he won't let go of like, hey, maybe I should do this for the, you know, the betterment of the species, just to really make sure we end up at the right place instead of, you know, letting go of seeing my family again. Which, by the way, they've been traveling through time. They're like 20-something, some odd years now.
Yeah.
Like, very much gone from the people that he knew.
Right.
He flings himself into this black hole, and he is taken across into this weird, just complete otherness. You know,
the Tesseract.
He is in the Tesseract. So where he's currently at, he's no longer in the 3 dimensions that he normally defines.
Here, I want to read something real quick.
Okay.
This is a good place to put this in. Slate.com did a question and answer list. Common questions about the movie and answers. And one of the questions, what's a Tesseract? Isn't that the thingy from the Avengers? Which the minute they said Tesseract, I thought, you know, hey, I'm in the Avengers too. Yay.
Yeah.
The answer, yes, in the Marvel Universe, the Tesseract is an infinity stone, an object of extraordinary power. In our universe, however, Tesseract is the geometric term for a 4-dimensional cube. If a cube is the 3-dimensional equivalent of a square, a Tesseract is the 4-dimensional equivalent of the cube. Again, the 4th dimension being time. The important thing is that the Tesseract is a space built by they, so that Cooper can communicate with Murph. And who are the mysterious they people keep referring to? Assuming Cooper, Matthew McConaughey, is right, they are our descendants who have evolved to exist in 5 dimensions. Because they exist in 5 dimensions, time being the 4th dimension, their experience of time is not linear in the same way that ours is. They create the wormhole in the Tesseract that saves Cooper. Again, Slate.com, that's just 2 questions, long list.
Okay, so he ends up in this black void, and this starts falling through something, and that something is, think about it as just a massive, you know, 3D grid that he falls through.
Well, think of it like this. Think of every moment in time arranged like bookshelves.
Yeah, and it's literally of this one moment in time that they're showing him, and he finds out that they are showing him this distinct moment in time so he can communicate. Mm-hmm. And so he starts communicating, and it turns out it was one of the things from the first act of the movie that they thought was just this weird happening. So he communicates with them, and, you know, he's shows them the way to save humanity.
Right.
And then, you know, he's talking back and forth with this computer, and the computer's telling him, you know...
TARS.
Yeah, TARS. They're taking it apart now.
Which, by the way... I think that's another 2001 reference. When I saw the previews, and I saw, because you know the computers are they're basically slab shaped.
Yeah.
Well, that looks like the black monolith from 2001, and I assumed when I saw the movie that their motions would make more sense to me. They really didn't, to be honest with you. I never felt like those robots existed in the real world. Their actions always seemed like somebody was holding them up.
Yeah.
But I think it's a visual nod to 2001. I think the reason that they've got those black slab computers is as a visual nod to 2001.
Yeah.
So
everything starts disassembling, and it's basically okay. So just the real quick way to wrap it up is they are basically the embodiment of everyone who is yet to exist and has existed. Mm-hmm. Because whenever you're born into this life, you start off as like nothing, like this clean slate of like pure essence. And you're born into this life and you gain a personality, and that personality holds on to things. You hold on to resources or attachments or relationships or anything like that. And then when you leave this life, you end up having to sort of let go. And you sort of fall back into that essence. Mm-hmm. And that essence was, think about it as essentially like a heaven. And that heaven was helping him to continue life because it's a life that they were all part of. So that heaven is helping him because they now exist in that 5th dimension, which is like pure essence, pure love. Mm-hmm. And it's helping him to continue to save the species that it was once a part of.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's funny because I took something different out of it.
What did you take?
I didn't interpret it the way you are, but I'm not, and your interpretation is no more correct than mine.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of this is open for interpretation. The explanation that I was going with that I thought I got from the movie was that the they is us in the future. That it's the Terminator John Connor thing.
Mm-hmm.
John Connor sends his father back in time to create him.
Yeah.
Okay, which, obviously you've got a paradox. How can John Connor exist to send his father back to create him? At some, there's got to be a loop in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the same one where they talk about if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, how could you exist to send yourself back in time to kill your grandfather?
Yeah.
But that was the impression that I got, was that the future us was manipulating the past. And they had created this tesseract, this space inside the black hole, allowing him to be the ghost to communicate with his daughter. We evolved. This gets really loopy. We had evolved to the point where we could go back and save ourselves.
Yeah. See, I was taking it as in before you were and after you are.
Right.
You are part of that essence. And that essence is like a knowing, knowledgeable thing that everyone is a part of. And it wanted to continue. It didn't want the life to end because of the things it wouldn't let go of.
Well, remember, Cooper says, and Tars, I think, says it too, they is us.
Yeah. And they are.
Yeah.
Like by either of those stretches, by either of our theories.
Right.
But
I know that whole time loop thing, I know that some people have had some trouble with that. Because I've seen some Twitter comments, and I've seen, if you'll go on IMDb, there are some major flame wars going on about that one, where, people are basically arguing over, again, how can future us go back in time and save present us if we didn't survive without their help?
Yeah. See, my theory doesn't involve that, though.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why I didn't, because you mentioned that, and one of the tweets we actually got mentioned that, and I was like, wow, what? And I was like, oh, okay, it's their future beings that are helping. And see, mine is that they transcend time and space, and it's everything. Like, it existed before man did, and then man, you know, it's like basically a soul.
I think we both got a piece of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think we're blind people, and it's the elephant. And I'm grabbing the leg saying it's a trunk, and you're grabbing the nose saying it's a snake.
Yeah.
So, well, I will. Let me say this, because you were talking about early on about what the current world was. One of the major themes that I saw going through the movie was the tug of war between acting in your own self-interest and acting for the common good. And the world that we see at the beginning of that movie, to me, is a world that is no longer acting in the common good. It is a world that is no longer moving forward. It's clinging to the past. It's clinging to what we have left. We stopped innovating. We stopped doing things for the common good. And I kind of see that in a political sense. Globally, there is an austerity movement where you've got people that are vigorously arguing against the role of government to work for the common good. You've got, why do we pay taxes? Why do we do all these things? And in a sense, I saw that movie as kind of a logical extension of what happens when we stop investing in infrastructure, what happens when we stop doing research, when we stop innovating and reaching for the stars. The whole reason anybody can hear this podcast is because of the government.
Yeah.
The private sector did not create the internet. Private sector took something that was created by the public sector and made it what it was. But the private sector did not create the internet. Just like the public sector is what put us on the moon. the public sector did the GI Bill, which put a lot of people through college, which had a long-term beneficial result. The New Deal built a lot of infrastructure, put a lot of people to work. I always kind of get a kick out of people that say that, because people who are critical of FDR will say that, all that massive government spending in the New Deal didn't get us out of the Great Depression. It was World War II. What they're saying is the massive government spending of the New Deal didn't get us out of the Great Depression, but the massive government spending for the war effort did.
Yeah.
Well, you can't, you're trying to prove one point by claiming the opposite. So in a sense, that's what I saw in this movie is the argument is we stopped doing things for the common good. We started working in our own self-interest. That's where the whole bit about, no, we really didn't go to the moon, and no, we don't want people to be engineers. We want them to be farmers, and no, NASA's not worth it, so we're not going to fund them. That's why they're underground. You get, when they actually go on their mission, the surprise cameo that Matt Damon, nobody knew that he was in the movie.
It was almost like in Seven whenever Kevin Spacey wasn't in the billing,
right.
So you didn't see him coming.
Well, if you look at that is an individual who is acting in his own self-interest. He sends out a fake message, basically, because he wants to be rescued, even though that planet is not habitable.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he wants to serve the greater good,
yeah.
But he doesn't want to sacrifice himself for it.
That's right.
He's like, no, I decided I don't want this. I want to be rescued. I'm not willing to die for this cause.
Yeah,
and
even though that will doom all of humanity. See, he's not acting in the common good. He's acting in his own self-interest.
Yeah,
and he ditches everybody.
And then after he saves himself, then he's like, okay, now let's act for the common good.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. You can't have both,
And, and Cooper is another example of that. This is somebody who he's trying to act in the common good. He's leaving his family behind, and he's going to go out and he's going to try and save humanity. But in essence, he's sacrificing his daughter to do it. He even though he swoops in at the end and he's the ghost that gives the coordinates and knocks books off the shelves and things like that, the fact is that she grows up without a father. And I thought it was somewhat fitting that at the end of the movie, she basically says to him, not I'm angry at you, I hate you, whatever, but she basically says to him, a parent should not have to watch their child die, which I get. Okay.
Yeah.
But in a larger sense, she also says, you weren't there for my life, so you should not be there for my death. You chose to go this other way, so go that other way.
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway is still out there somewhere. Go get her. Mm-hmm. But, in my final moments, I want the people that have been with me my whole life to be here, not you who left. You see? The whole argument about self-interest versus common interest, the common good, is a theme that I see running throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of my take.
It's funny because the thing she says, no parent should have to watch their child die.
Mm-hmm.
That's the entire thing they were doing on that mission.
Yeah,
they literally had a cargo bay full of babies.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything they were doing is so their children wouldn't die.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then he did it. He did the thing to where he wouldn't have to watch his children die from that, but it did cost him, and she lived so long without him that she's going to die anyway.
Yeah. The one scene that just blew me away in terms of emotional power, the first planet they go to is called Miller's Planet, okay? And the planets are named based on who landed on it.
Yeah.
Miller landed on the planet that was closest to Gargantua, which is the black hole. The time dilation there is such that 1 hour equals 7 years of Earth time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they end up getting stuck down there a lot longer than they intend to.
Yeah.
So when they come back, 23 years have gone by, and they've got 23 years of messages from home waiting for them. And that scene where Matthew McConaughey is sitting there watching message after message from his kids, growing up, getting married, a child dies, boom, there's my daughter. She's a full-grown woman. You said you would come back when we were the same age. Well, guess what? We're the same age now, and you're not back.
Yeah.
That scene, the emotional power of that, just watching him go through 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
That is an amazing scene.
Most stories, whenever they do that, it's like, oh, you jumped ahead, like millions of years.
Right,
and all human,
right.
and you're like, well, I just lost so many people that it doesn't really have that much of an effect. And as an audience, you're like, it's so far ahead, I have nothing to ground on. But if you think about, what if you were just gone for, a couple months and 20 years happened to everyone that you know?
I have to quote a Marilyn Manson song here.
Okay.
The death of one is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic.
Well, that's a quote from Stalin.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a quote from Marilyn Manson, too.
Marilyn Manson quoting Stalin. But yeah, it's like, it's just, it's tragedy if it's a couple people. If
you know what, though? Stalin didn't rock as hard as Marilyn Manson.
All those years, if you make the number too high, it's unrelatable. But if you make it a small number, it was massively relatable.
Well, yeah, it's that couple of hours on Miller's Planet cost him immensely.
Yeah.
Because that little mission that was only going to take a certain amount of time has now he has expended so many resources on just the first leg of the journey.
Yeah, and he had seen actually how much it was going to cost him going on this journey. Because before it was like, yes, I'm doing this thing, and you don't really realize how big it is, and then you did the thing and you've lost a lot. It's like, oh, he didn't realize how much he was losing until then.
Right. I was blown away by this movie. I really like a lot of Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah.
Until you see how all the pieces fit together, you're not quite sure what you think.
Yeah.
And then once you see it, you immediately want to go back and see it again. Inception is one of those movies that, everybody I've met has a completely different theory about Inception. And some people get downright angry about it.
Yeah, it's real weird.
Okay. The Prestige is one of those movies. I don't know about you, but the minute I figured out what was really going on
I
in
haven't
Prestige,
seen Prestige yet.
Okay, the minute I figured out what was really going on in the Prestige, I mean, I was ill.
Yeah.
Okay. And the very last scene in that movie makes you immediately want to start the movie again.
Yeah.
Because it's like, holy crap. That's what I've been watching this whole time. So anyway, I strongly recommend Interstellar. Nolan is, what kind of gets me is, by all rights, Christopher Nolan should not be the successful director that he is. Have you seen a movie called Primer?
Primer?
Or Primer?
Yeah, the time travel movie?
Yeah. Okay, that movie was made on a budget of, what, $50?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The guy that wrote it and directed it stars in it, but it's a very cerebral, very good movie.
It's a class.
Yeah. But it was made on a shoestring budget. Christopher Nolan is a very intelligent director, and his movies are always dealing with these bigger themes. And in any other universe, he would be making
the $50 movie.
He'd be making the $50 big idea movies.
Yeah.
But instead, he's doing these gigantic box office.
And we're lucky for it.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad that it worked out that way.
So we had a few of our listeners wanted to contribute to the discussion.
Yeah,
on
I sent out
Interstellar.
a tweet asking, what did you think of Interstellar?
And so we have a comment from Ascalon. Just came back after watching it. Amazing movie. Was funny when they were saving fuel and were docking any time they wanted. One question, why would future people create anomaly they didn't need to survive in the first place? Yeah. It's funny. I never ran into that problem. Neuronic17 said, thought it was brilliant yet highly predictable. Hard to find movies that aren't nowadays, though.
Yeah.
It's because whenever they started talking about messages moving across time, I was like, oh, okay, that's the bookshelf. You know. So,
well, there's a lot of references in that movie to other movies and to other works. For example, did you notice that the illustration of the wormhole with the piece of paper is right out of Event Horizon?
Oh, yeah. Whenever he folded the piece of paper,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
The only thing is they take it one step further, which is in Event Horizon, they poke a hole through the paper and they say, obviously that's the most direct route between the 2 points is to put the 2 points together.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, they then go on in Interstellar to say, and a sphere is what a 3D representation of these holes in the paper would look like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, boom, there's the wormhole. There is a shot where McConaughey is going into the Endurance, and it looks like he's floating on his side in a room that's, he doesn't have a whole lot of top or bottom room.
Mm-hmm.
That shot straight out of 2001.
Yeah.
There's just a bunch of little bitty scenes and callbacks.
I don't think I said it yet, but one thing Nolan did really well is he made space seem full.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always like some nebula or something.
Right.
It was never, because a lot of it's just this big backdrop and there's not a lot there.
I will say, as a Kerbal player, there were so many points in there where they were doing things, and I was sitting there thinking, yeah, and that's the periapsis, and that's how you dock, and that's how you rendezvous, and there's RCS, and and they do a massive gravity assist with the black hole, and it's just
they don't waste, or like they don't just be like, okay, now we're going to do this thing. It's like they kind of like, okay, well, they spend a lot of time plotting and theorizing, like what they should do, and
Kip Thorne, the physicist, was a consultant on this movie, and
he was also a robot.
Yeah, and he made the point that everything in this movie is going to have some basis in reality. Everything in it, even the theoretical stuff, is stuff that it's like we can't create a tesseract. We can't create a room where all the moments in time are spread out in front of us. But theoretically, you could. What I thought was interesting was I've already seen an article today. Somebody criticized the science of Miller's planet, saying that to get the time dilation, the planet would have to be so close to the lip of the black hole that it would destroy the planet. Then they had to turn around and issue a correction and say, I forgot to factor in the difference between a stationary black hole and a black hole that is spinning at a high rate of speed. If it is spinning at a high rate of speed, you can be that far back and have that kind of time dilation. So it's interesting to me that, even the people that know what they're talking about
are like, hey, oh, wait, no, you're good.
Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson was on CBS News, and they were asking him some questions. Obviously, the movie relies heavily on two concepts, the wormhole and the black hole. And they had asked him, what's the difference?
A wormhole has a lot of the similar physics to a black hole, except it's a portal to another place in the galaxy.
Okay.
And so you can use it, in principle, to travel great distances much faster than if you otherwise sort of took the detour. And in Star Trek, they kind of do that, with their warp drives. They warp space, and they can travel
that's
much...
a wormhole.
Well, at the time, they didn't have that vocabulary, and if they did, that's surely what they would have called it. But in Star Trek, you want to get across the galaxy during the commercial. That's how you need some way to do it faster than the speed of light.
And the second question that they asked, again, the planet that was closest to the black hole, Miller's planet, was I've been calling it the water planet.
Yeah.
But they asked if the tidal waves, the tsunamis, the recurring tsunamis, was that realistic? And Neil deGrasse Tyson had this to say.
If you're in orbit near a black hole, which is what that planet was, there's very high tidal forces. And so the way they portrayed it as this sort of singular spike, that was a little hard for me, but there would be extremely high and exaggerated tides relative to anything we would experience on Earth. And one thing about tides, you think of tides as coming in and out on the shore. Yeah. That's not what's actually happening. There's a tidal bulge in space, and the planet rotates you in and out of that bulge. So it looks like the wave is coming towards you, but you are actually moving in and through and out the other side of the wave. And they did it twice.
Isn't that amazing? Because I thought of the wave as moving towards them.
Yeah.
No.
And that's the way you normally see it because, just on Earth, that's not the way
it's
to
all
go.
Perspective.
Yeah. And, if you really think about it, the wave was moving. It shows how fast that planet was moving, too.
Yeah. I guess it gives you an indication of size as well.
Yeah.
So, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I guess I would just say that I think it's safe to assume we both give it 2 thumbs up.
Yes. Yes, that is safe to say.
How soon are you going back to see it?
I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to find time to watch movies. So
you need to see it in IMAX.
Yeah, and it's kind of few and far between when I do. So there's some other ones I've been wanting to see.
If you have any loose teeth,
go
see it in IMAX. It'll just knock them right out.
Oh, there
you don't
go.
even have to go to the dentist. Just be sure and pick them up off.
How
the
about
floor
you? When's the next time you're going to see it?
As soon as humanly possible. Honestly, if we had not had the podcast this evening, I might have been there.
Oh, really?
Already.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably going to take my daughter to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Because she loves stuff like this. She ate Inception up. And, and she loved Dark Knight Rises. I think she would really enjoy this film.
Nolan has a very good way of, by the time you're done with the movie, you are tired.
Yeah.
Because it is long and is very
I didn't notice the time though.
Yeah, I didn't.
I
didn't. But by the end of it, you've gone on this huge journey. But by the time it's over, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I want to do it again.
A long movie has to justify its runtime.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to take that much time, do something with it.
Yeah, I walked out of Dread, and the Dread was 90 minutes. And I was like, whoo, yeah, that was fun. That was just run through it. And then I came out of Interstellar, and I was like, whew.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah.
It's not this condensed, bam, pow, fun.
Yeah,
It's like you're going through this big experience. And when you come out the other side, you're going to be 20-something years older.
Well, I guess the biggest praise I can give to the movie is that at no point did my butt go numb.
Yeah.
So 2.5 hours, and
it's because the seats are shaking.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. Kept the blood going.
It keeps the blood in your butt.
Well, that does it for this edition. I guess a fairly lengthy edition of After the Credits.
Yeah.
Since Interstellar has so much to do with physics and theoretical physics,
we thought it was good to just go right into it.
Yeah. I wanted to leave you. We've been leaving you with songs at the end of After the Credits, and so I figured I would leave you with a song about physics from the master himself, MC Hawking.
Harmony with harmony. Doomsday, drop a load on them. Entropy, how can I explain it? I'll take it brain by brain it, but have you all jump and shove and saying it. Let's just say that it's a measure of disorder in a system that is closed, like with the border. It's sorta like a well-measurement of randomness, proposed in 1850 by a German, but wait, I digress. What the hell with entropy? I hear the people still exclaiming. It seems I gotta start the explaining. You ever drop an egg on the floor, you see it break, you go and get a mop so you can clean up your mistake. But did you ever stop to ponder why we know it's true? If you drop a broken egg, you will not get an egg that's new. That's entropy, or ENTRO to the T to the Y. The reason why the sun will one day all burn out and die. Order from disorder is a scientific rarity. Allow me to explain it with a little bit more clarity. Did I say rarity? I meant impossibility. At least in a closed system there will always be more entropy. That's entropy, and I hope that you're all done with it. If you are, here's your membership. You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy?
Every last one of me.
You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy?
Yeah, you know me.
You done with entropy? Doomsday, kick it in.